In today's episode, we're going to talk about data. If you don't own your data, you don't own your business. And that's just a hot take, but truly it's math. In over 3 decades in restaurant technology, I continue to see this mistake made over and over again. I continue to watch operators make it day in and day out. And really the issue is that they don't understand that the data is one of the most valuable assets they have as a company. And it flows through and allows them to make more and more decisions that they need to make. Oftentimes they don't even know that they should have access to the data that they're producing within the stores, and that it is such a critical piece to continue to see where they're going. Why do you think that some of these third-party delivery ordering companies and such continue to be so passionate about keeping the data? Because they realize how valuable it is. Today we're going to fix that issue. In 15 years of building concepts, 3 locations, 10 locations, every loyalty member, every online order, every transaction, every menu, every promo, what happened with them in those situations? Everything is stored inside of your tech stack. Everything is stored in your point of sale. Everything is stored in your online ordering. But imagine a day that you wake up and all of that data is completely gone. Not deleted, not like that the world went poof and the internet died, but just that you no longer have access to that data. You can't see who your guests are. You can't talk to your loyalty members. You can't see year over year sales. You can't look at what you did for lunch yesterday. You can't see what items are selling most. You can't run a campaign to your best guests. You can't understand what's happening online versus in store, in the bar versus the dining room. This is not like a hypothetical situation. I see it happen every day where people lose access to their data, don't understand how to get access to their data. And in most cases, the operators just say, I don't know, I'll figure it out, because they're operators. And that's the part that I continue to hear and see. The uncomfortable truth, though, is that your vendors are using this data to continue to grow their business. And oftentimes they want to figure out how to gatekeep that data to ensure that they can use it for their own purposes, marketing, sales information, going and selling it to consumer product goods companies out there, but not understanding that you need to be able to get that data, that you need to be able to collect that data, that you need to be able to use that data, that you could even monetize some of that data to be able to go work with your vendors to understand what you're selling, some of that kind of thing is really, really critical. So understanding who has access to your data, who owns it, and what you can do with it are some of the things that we're going to talk through today. I would tell you to think about data as an asset that you can continue to exploit, whether that's mealtime data, whether that's transactional data, whether that's labor data, whether that's catering data. Understanding who owns your data and what you can do with it is huge. The 3 big reasons that we continue to see in 2026 and beyond that make data such a critical component that have never been in my 30 years in the restaurant tech space, such an ability to use it for things is really the advent, and everybody's going to say AI, but AI truly has helped people to be able to get to the data that they have to be able to do the things that they want to do. Historically, you would have data that would be stored in all of these different silos, and you have to call your vendor, spend some time working through them. But with today's open access to data, if you've done your contracts properly and have the proper vendor relationships, you can go exploit that data to be able to grab the data that's from your point of sale, grab the data from your labor management system, grab the data from your online ordering system, and start to build your own reports to be able to make the information visible to you, make it deliverable to you in the way that you want it, in a very, very clear way to help you drive your business forward. I would encourage all of our listeners to look at the contracts that they have with their vendors to make sure that they have access to the data. They are using your data. These vendors are using your data to be able to do things for their business. Why not make sure that you're able to use the data that you're producing within the stores for yourselves? The second thing that I continue to see is technology continues to get consolidated within the restaurant tech space. Everybody's heard, and most of our listeners out there probably have been on the receiving end of a purchase from their point of sale company, from their loyalty company, from their gift card company. Many, many PE firms, VC firms, and different even large public companies are out buying POS companies, loyalty companies, online ordering companies. So understanding that oftentimes your vendor's going to get acquired, but if your contract says that you have access to your data, even during that acquisition, you have the capability to do what you need to do with it. The new owner that is buying this asset is oftentimes buying it not just for the customer base and the revenue that's coming in, but for the data that's there. But if your contract is at a place where you can get access to that data, even through that acquisition period, I would tell you to evaluate that and make sure. The other thing, as you guys go through acquisitions out there on the listeners that are out there listening, make sure that they don't force you to sign a new agreement that eliminates your ability to have access to that data. Because again, sometimes during their due diligence process, they have looked at it and said, we're going to go monetize this data in the future. And so they will throw out, these new agreements that says, hey, we just purchased XYZ company. You need to sign a new contract in order to be able to do this. Make sure that you have access to your data as you're doing this. The third issue that we continue to see is your ability to switch between different vendors. The longer you stay with a platform, the more data you're generating. The more data you generate, the harder it is to move those things, which from a tech vendor's perspective is great because you get locked into that data set. At the same time, as an operator, you look at that and go, it gets more and more expensive to leave. It gets harder and harder to leave. This is part of what vendors are doing day in and day out. DoorDash does it. Olo does it. Lots of different vendors are doing this on purpose. And many of us have given our rights away to even our own personal data to the Facebooks and Googles of the world because we realize that they're giving us some value, and so we're giving them data. In your restaurant is a very similar situation. Understanding that you're generating this data and continuing to push those things in, but when you go to change systems, do you have access to migrate that data? Is there a way to be able to go look at moving that data over to the other platforms so that you can look at what you did last Mother's Day, so that you can look at last Valentine's Day, so you can look at opening day of football season to decide how big was the patio? What was the weather on the patio during that day? How much labor did you run? What did it look like? So I would encourage you not just to look at, can I get access to the reports? Can I get access to the information that's out there? But also, do I have rights to the underlying data that's creating that dashboard, that's creating that report? Do I have the ability to be able to export that and put it into a different system if I want to ensure that I can move if and when I want to? So I would encourage all of us, as you're looking at those three things, to make sure that you guys own your data and that you understand the value of why it is such a big deal. Now, after you've looked at that, I would encourage everyone to look at these 4 topics to say, okay, what are the things that I need to make sure that I have access to? Do I have the ability to export my data? Is it in a format that's usable? Do I have to pay extra fees for that? Can I store it on a hard drive somewhere in my property or online to make sure that I can get access to it? Number 2 is who has access to that data? Is it just your tech vendor? Is part of their contract say that they're allowed to sell it to CPG companies? Who else is seeing that data? Are they using it, normalizing it, and selling it to your competitors? Making sure that you understand that is really, really critical. Number 3, does the vendor have to delete your data if you leave them? If you leave their platform, can your data get scrubbed? Is it able to be deleted? And can you get proof of that? Is there something in your contract that says that if you leave and stop paying this contract, that your data is gone and the vendor can't use this? And number 4 is really just the idea that you can continue to use this data for your own purposes. That you don't need to jump through a bunch of hoops. You have no idea how many times I have heard people looking for their data and they get exorbitant 6-figure fees that people are saying, this is what it's going to cost you to get your data. And so it really prevents them oftentimes from leaving that vendor. And so I would encourage you to make sure that you have access to the data, that you can export it, that you know who has access, who else has access to it, that you know that they're going to delete your data once you're gone, and that it is available to you how you want it and when you want it. And there may be a small fee, but nothing exorbitant in the form of 6 figures. Again, running back through, do I have access to it? Do I have the ability to export it? Do they keep it if and when I leave? And can I get it out when I want it? So ensuring that you have all of those things are really, really critical because, again, with the advent of AI, with the advent of some of the other things that we talked about earlier in the call, in the interview, with the advent of the things that we talked about earlier in the episode, understanding that you have access to that data and making sure that you can do with it what you want to, exploit it, using some of the tools that are out there on the marketplace that you can move, that you can continue to run your business to ensure that you can continue to be successful and compete in today's day and age. Again, I would encourage all of our listeners, go out there, Go look at your contracts, go look at what it is that you're doing. Again, I talked about it earlier. I had a 10 unit concept that wanted to move their gift cards over from one platform to another. Their current gift card provider asked them to write a check for 6 figures, and it was going to take them 8 weeks to get the data. Is that really holding your data hostage? Do you own your data? Ultimately, that customer was really, really struggling because they didn't know how to sign a check for $100,000 to get this 10 stores worth of data out for their gift cards. And 8 weeks. So they weren't able to operate their business the way that they needed to. And so look at those contracts, look at the things that you're signing, making sure that you have access to your data, that you own your data, that you can exploit your data, and ensure that you can continue to drive the behaviors that you want. Like I said, loyalty, online ordering, third-party delivery, point of sale data, labor management data. Again, making sure that you understand that. Many of these tech vendors understand that access to the data is a gold mine, and they can continue to exploit it, continue to use it. They can not only lever it, like we just talked about, but they can also use it to go do the things that they want to do as a business. So 3 things I would encourage every listener to go look at. Go look at every one of your contracts that you have with all your tech vendors. Look at every single one of them. What's the termination date? What's the access to the data? Again, online ordering, third-party delivery, loyalty, marketing, gift cards, kitchen video, inventory. Look at all of those things and ask who has access to the data. The second, get a call scheduled with each of these vendors that you see in there that you don't have ownership of your data, and understand how could you get a clause put into there? How could you get access to your data if you needed it? How could you make sure that you at least are starting that contract before they're showable? Because unfortunately, oftentimes we only get into these situations where we're frustrated with a vendor and now things are tense and now things don't go well. The third is work down that list. Continue to look at the people that are the most critical vendors for you that you think that are going to be the biggest challenge, and start those conversations. Write them down, make sure that they get stuck in there. If it's not your highest leverage point, assign it to somebody on your team. Get your bookkeeper, get your finance person, get your office manager to start to do these things. If you don't have your contracts, make sure that you've got them stored somewhere, because again, data continues to be an asset. It's only going to continue to be a greater and greater asset as you continue to design and continue to build out new systems for your brand. The world continues to get more and more digital. We're creating more data today than we ever have before, but understanding that you should have access to that data, that you should understand who is able to use it, how you can use it to leverage it to make your business better, and what are the things that you need to ensure that you're doing to protect yourself against people that are trying to take advantage of it. If anything you heard on today's show resonated with you and you haven't already subscribed, please do so down below. Subscribe to Restaurant Technology Guys podcast on the Apple Podcast and Spotify, as well as our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for showing up, and make it a great day.